The 4 top singles wrestlers and the 4 top tag teams compete in respective Iron Man tournaments where they have a round-robin style tournament with a points-based system that certainly was very convoluted, but what can you expect when Jim fucking Herd was running things? Boy, the talents really did their absolute best to make everything make sense, despite the fact that Jim Herd was driving and pulverizing WCW's business to the point that, man, this was about as good as Starrcade was going to get until Jim Herd was out of the company. And honestly, well, let's just goddamn get to it, shall we? I'm John Renton with the Retro Review, WCW Starrcade 1989 Future Shock. Yeah, they certainly were in a shock for the future, not shocking the system. The future of Starrcade was kind of goddamn bleak because 1990, which I retro-reviewed, was certainly a goddamn mess. It was the Pat O'Connor Memorial Tag Team Tournament, and then 1991 had the Queeful Lottery. I think that's how that went, actually Lethal Lottery, and right after that, they said, this was terrible, Jim Herd, get the hell out of here. Yeah, there were some good matches. There was some good action on this particular Starrcade card, and honestly, this is one of the better Starrcade cards until everything just fell into a goddamn hole. This is also one of the last Starrcade events that I haven't retro-reviewed. There's 93, 97, and 99. And because I had a little bit of time on my hands, I was like, alright, let me watch this. Let me see if this holds up, because I remember really, really liking this Starrcade. You know, I remember having the Essential Starrcade DVD, where they had the countdown of the 25 best Starrcade matches. They had a biography on Starrcade, which really wasn't much of anything, besides a puff piece because it was a WWE production. But that's okay, let's rewatch Starrcade 89 Future Shock. By rewatch, you can listen to me talk about it, but I want to know what you guys have to say about this particular tournament-based format, because it kind of gave me flashbacks to Mania 4. Now, don't get me wrong. Starrcade 89 is infinitely better than Mania 4, because Mania 4 just went on forever. forever in a day. That's never. Even though Randy Savage won the WWF Championship, the rest of the show was hit and miss. Now, there were a few matches that were misses on this. They were at the Atlanta Omni. 10,000 fans. Honestly, that's not a sellout, though. And you could see fans were still filing in. Like, you could see from the very beginning, even after the first couple matches, there were still plenty of empty goddamn seats. In the camera shots, because I think the Omni had like 2 bowls. It had the lower bowl, the upper bowl. Because it seated, what, 16, 17,000 people? And yeah, 2 tournaments. 4 top singles wrestlers and 4 top tag teams. The computer graphics, my god, the imagery, the cheap, you know, like that late 80s, early 90s technology and everything. It's all RoboCop-like. But RoboCop wouldn't show up until a few months later at Capital Combat. Boy, that was fun to review. Gary Michael Cobbett as a ring announcer. JR and Terry Funk called the singles matches. JR and Jim Cornette called the tag team matches. Jim Cornette has talked about this on his podcast, or at least he talked about it at some point. I don't remember, you know, the exact episode. But he talked about, hey, the Midnight Express could have been in this tournament. They could have taken the losses because, unfortunately, the tag team of Doom took the pinfalls. Doom, that would become tag team champions by, I want to say, it wasn't Wrestle War. I think it was Capital Combat that they beat the Steiners for the tag titles, and then they held them until, I want to say it was Super Brawl 1, they lost, and then Doom split, and they had their match, I believe, at, God, I'm trying to goddamn remember. Really trying to remember here. I mean, I think it was Wrestle War 91. Honestly, I'm drawing a blank on a lot of this stuff because some things here are a little bit foggy. But yeah, Doom would become long-reigning tag team champions, but boy, they would eat a lot of losses here. The points-based system. You get 20 points if you get a pinfall or submission victory. A countout gets 15 points. A DQ gets 10 points. And a draw gets 5 points. A draw if it goes to a time limit draw. If you both get counted out, you get no points. If you both get disqualified, there's no points. Again, convoluted. Fucking Jim Herd is what I wrote down. The tag teams are on the stage. The tag teams, by the way, the tag team of Doom. The Steiner Brothers. The Road Warriors. The Steiner Brothers, who were the current, I believe, tag team champions. And then we would have the Wild Samoans that were the Samoan Savage and Fatu. Then I was wondering who the hell Nitron was, because I remember, you know, seeing Nitron. Nitron didn't last very long as far as a character. Nitron was Tyler Mane, who was Sabretooth in the 2000 X-Men movie. And also, I believe, played Michael Myers in the Rob Zombie movies. Rob Zombie should not be allowed to direct another movie until he stops putting his stupid twat wife in them. But anyway, let's talk about this. J.R. Cornette calling the tag action. We go with the Steiners against the tag team of Doom. And this was good stuff because it was power-based, because the tag team of Doom... It was funny, there was Ron Simmons and Butch Reed in masks. And I guess it was an idea, because Flair was still booking at this point. Like, let's not insult the fans. Let's have them wear these masks, and eventually we can reveal, like, oh my god, it's them. But no two human beings, especially on the goddamn roster, were built like that. Butch Reed was a little long in the tooth at that point because he'd had injuries. Even though I think he was only 36, 37 when he retired from full-time wrestling. And Ron Simmons, just a freaking beast, was still a couple years away from winning the WCW Heavyweight Championship. And Cornette was great here, analyzing the tag team action. The crowd popped for everything the Steiners did. Literally everything the Steiners did. The Steiners were super goddamn over at this point. And Nitron got laid out. We get a melee, and then we get a count-up. But the Steiners got 15 points because Rick Steiner got back in the ring. There were very convoluted finishes here. We get more of that. The singles wrestlers on the stage of the Great Muta with Gary Hart, who is the current TV champion and also was undefeated at this point. At least undefeated on TV. Probably undefeated on house shows, I don't know. Or at least he hadn't been pinned or submitted. Probably less by disqualification and stuff. Lex Luger, the current U.S. champion. The ever-popular Icon Sting. And the World Heavyweight Champion, still face Nature Boy Ric Flair. And we have Sting versus Luger. And Luger was always a better heel. Lex and Sting were friends back then. Still are friends now. Sting sold his ass off. As much as I don't like giving credit to Lex Luger, as far as a U.S. champion, he is on the Mount Rushmore of U.S. champions. He was fucking great. He's great as face, great as a heel. Had a 523-day U.S. title reign that he was currently in the midst of at this point. And later, Sting fires up. Luger kind of botches a point where I think he was supposed to move and Sting was supposed to go into the ropes, but then Sting just had to choke him and get him back in. He was like, God damn it, Lex, let's wake up here. Then they get tangled up in the ropes, and Luger falls on Sting. He gets his feet on the ropes, covers 1, 2, 3. He gets 20 points, and Sting's all despondent. And then the Road Warriors took on the tag team of Doom. That's how Gary Michael Capetta says it, and I love Gary Michael Capetta, but it just sounds funny that they made him announce it that way. But Gary Michael Capetta is awesome. LOD was hugely over. More power for power stuff. Pops for the big power moves. We had a clothesline by Hawk. 1, 2, 3. And 20 points go to the Road Warriors. Not a lot of big match analysis on some of these because they're just basic. Ric Flair took on the Great Muta. At first, we had Norman the Lunatic handing out candy to children. Yeah, that was a great use of Mike Shaw there. He was Norman the Lunatic. He was Trucker Norman. Then he was a monk. And then he was a friar or something like that. And then he was Bastion Booger. And I believe passed away a few years ago. Rest in peace, Mike Shaw, because I actually got to see some of his stuff on in Stampede, and while he was a little bit weird, he certainly was utilized better there, even though Stampede was pretty much a dumpster fire by that point. So, it didn't last very long. This was under 2 minutes. I mean, it was quick. Buzz Sawyer was out there trying to help Great Muta for some reason, because he was part of Gary Hart's stable. Arn Anderson and Ole Anderson. It wasn't going to be Tully Blanchard because Jim Herd decided to nix the whole deal that he made with Tully and Arn because Tully failed a drug test and was like, well, we can't bring a drug addict in here, so we're going to not have him and we're going to cut Arn's deal because Jim Herd was a goddamn idiot and a piece of shit. And Jim Herd continued to drive WCW business into the ground. But anyway, we get a moonsault. Flair gets his knees up and then gets an inside cradle 1, 2, 3. Muta loses for the first time in WCW, at least on programming, in less than 2 minutes. And unfortunately, it would only be downhill from here. The Road Warriors took on the Steiners, 7 minutes of them one-upping the first time they faced off, at least on TV or pay-per-view. We get a melee, and we get a double pin, and Scott gets the shoulder first, 1, 2, 3. Not bad. Good pops for these power moves. That was pretty much it. It's proof that you didn't need to go away super long to have this end up being pretty good. And it was good for what it was. And the Steiners get their points, and the Road Warriors are all despondent and upset. But don't worry, the Road Warriors will come back, because, spoiler alert, they win the tournament. Sting took on the Great Muta. They had a great short feud in 1989. By short, I mean that Muta had won the TV championship in, I think, somewhere around Great American Bash 89 or something like that, or it was like held up and then he won on TV later. A little convoluted. And they would have a great match on the WCW New Japan Super Show in early 91. Was it early or mid 91? It was something like that, because that's when they had the working relationship still. Muta was incredible at this point. And he's going to be having his retirement match here in a little bit. As I'm recording this, we're a few weeks away from that. I got to find a way to watch that shit. But Muta was just great at this point. This is when his knees were still great. He was on the up. He was on the rise. He had been the White Ninja on Excursion when he had a few shots, you know, when he was at a couple Battle of the Belts in Florida. And then came back, got the Great Muta gimmick, had the mist and all that. And we get a big superplex. 1, 2, 3. 20 points to Sting. Muta takes his second loss after not having been pinned or submitted on TV since his debut earlier in the year. 2 losses. I understand that Muta, you know, probably, maybe Muta didn't mind. I mean, I don't know, but Muta was basically just beaten in power, and he was a champion. Now, if he wasn't a champion, it would have been one thing. But they wrote themselves into a goddamn corner. So we have the tag team of Doom. It's the last time I'm going to have to say that, because Doom's having their last match here against the Wild Samoans. Seeing Fatu in WCW is weird, as I noted. You don't headbutt a Samoan. What the hell are you doing? I say to people on a pay-per-view that occurred 34 goddamn years ago. We get a head-to-head collision. Oliver Humperdinck pushes the big kahuna. Pushes him. I don't know why they called him that. Just because he was big? Maybe because he was, I don't know, probably because he was big. He pushes whichever, I don't know if it was Fatu or Samoan Savage, because I kind of tuned out of this, unfortunately. And they also did mostly a back shot on that. And 1, 2, 3, and the tag team of Doom finishes with no points. So it's 20 points to the Wild Samoans. Then Flair took on Luger, world champ versus U.S. champ. Great psychology here. Luger being the heel and Flair being the face after the roles were reversed on Starrcade 88. And I did just recently retro review if you'd like to check that out. It'll be on the retro review or old school, you know, wrestling reviews and documentary reviews playlist. Good pace. Flair selling his ass off when he targeted the knee, you know, and hitting the big chops. He was selling Luger's power moves. Luger was selling the intensity of the chops. That's what I was trying to say. Luger did target the neck after Terry Funk had that feud, had pile driven him on the table after Wrestle War 89, after he lost to Steamboat, after Flair beat Steamboat, and Terry Funk pile drove him after being one of the judges, and then they had that feud leading into Great American Bash 89 all over the house shows, and they finished it up on the November Clash, and it goes to a time limit draw as Flair has the figure 4 on with like 30 seconds left. And they get 5 points because it's a draw where, you know, time limit draw. So now they have 25 points each. And then the Wild Samoans beat the Steiners after we get... This went a bit long. And I think it was... I mean, and I sort of get it. But it's like, you know, the Steiners, who were the tag team champions at this point, had... one of the Samoans... I don't know. The Steiners... It seemed like, again, they kind of wrote themselves into, or booked themselves into a corner here. But the referee witnesses an over-the-top rope toss, so the Samoans win. And they win by DQ, so they got 30 points. The Steiners had 35. So basically, the Road Warriors and the Samoans have to win. They have to, you know, they can't go to a draw, because then... Actually, no, if they went to a draw, then the Samoans would have 35. And the Road Warriors would be able to... And the Road Warriors would be out of the goddamn thing. I mean, they would have 25, and then there would be a wrestle-off between the Samoans and the Road Warriors. Then Luger took on Muta, where Muta targeted Luger's knee for roughly about 5 million years, which made sense, because Luger was still selling the fact that he was in the figure 4, even though it was only 30 seconds. Painful maneuver, I believe is how it's said. What a maneuver! But Vince McMahon is not on commentary, for this is WCW. And Luger ends up winning via DQ, because... in the closing moments, Muta like just sees that Luger is, Luger's kicking out of stuff and just decides, boom, just hits him with the mist, just blows the mist right in his guy, because he would always do that. Always do that. I know, always blow the mist. And that's it. And then Muta just walked off. No wonder Muta left and went back to New Japan after this. I mean, I think he was around. We were talking about, the story was, we're talking about turning him face. Gary Hart didn't want that because Gary Hart liked to manage the heels. And while Muta could have been a great face, and I really do think he would have been a great face, the way they had beaten him and treated him here, I kind of don't blame him for leaving. The big goddamn deal. Because Muta was a lot more successful in New Japan for a while than he ever would have been at this point in WCW, with the state WCW was in at this time, and would continue to be. Now, he would come back for Starrcade 89, or no, 89, this is 89, Starrcade 92, and he would wrestle on occasion, but his loyalty was to Japan, because they treat him well. Then he went to All Japan, and now he's in Noah, and now he's going to be retiring soon. And Great Muta has had an incredible goddamn career that has spanned pretty close to 40 years, I believe. Anyway, so, yeah, the Road Warriors then took on the Samoans for all the marbles. The Road Warriors have to win by pinfall or submission to win the tournament, which they do after another lariat from Hawk, 1, 2, 3. This is like 5 minutes. So, thanks, Wild Samoans. You couldn't play spoiler. And then the Road Warriors would leave after Capital Combat 90. Because Jim Herd ran everybody off. Jim Herd was an idiot. Then Ric Flair and Sting had a great match, as you would expect. Sting always listened to Flair. Flair could get the most out of Sting. Sting, using his charisma, his power. Flair would target the knee. Kept targeting it. Sting would fire up, but Flair targeted the knee again. Got the figure 4 on, or was about to, and with just a few seconds left, 1, 2, 3 with an inside cradle. Sting wins, and then we have Arn and Ole coming down. What the hell? Flair raises his hand because he's still a face, and they do the 4 horsemen signal, and do that, raise it into the air. I prefer raising this into the air, and then moving on from that. But they do that signal, and it leads them to the February Clash, where they would split, and then, unfortunately, they would have a cage match where Doug Dillinger would pull Sting down too hard, and he would tear his knee up. He would miss out on Wrestle War, and then would somehow miraculously come back by Great American Bash 90. And then, after he won the title, they put him in the Black Scorpion angle. Thanks, Jim Herd. And then they did a Road Warriors promo, and because they were too close to being over time, they, as the credits were rolling, because they would always have credits roll on these things for WCW, production credits, Sting and Flair were cutting promos, and that was it. So yeah, that was certainly fun to revisit. Fucking Jim Herd, but you know what? That being said, pretty good wrestling action here. As far as an in-ring product, WCW is doing really goddamn good shit here. Anyway, agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.